I'm Elaine Marshal, your Secretary of State, and I want to say to each and every one of you, happy spring. With the kind of year that we just had, we all deserve a good spring. It'll make us feel better to get outside and watch the flowers starting to grow, and all kinds of things about spring are great. I also want to welcome you to our very first Fireside Chat. Joining me will be Ozzie Stallworth. Ozzie has had many years of service on notaries. He is our North Carolina electronic notary and notary enforcement supervisor. Ozzie was in the notary world even before he came to my office. And I've been a notary for about 40 years now. So between us, we have many years of experience. We are excited to host this. You know, back in the 30s and the 40s, President Roosevelt had fireside chats in order to answer people's questions, to talk to people. It provided an opportunity for folks to ask questions, and that's what we're going to be doing, providing an opportunity to ask questions to help notaries perform to their very best. We ask you to submit questions in advance, and you did so. We are going to try to tackle as many of them as possible, but time is not going to permit. So there are other resources. First, there are the archived Notary Public newsletters that are on our website. Also, all of the Notary Public section is available on our website through sosnc.gov. Then the gold standard is the 2016 Notary Public Manual that each of you should have. Just dig for those answers. Most of them are in there. You also have the alternatives of the Notary Public Facebook group. And if you can't get your answer or can't get comfortable about the answer, communicate with the department at notary@sosnc.gov. We're going to turn this over to Ozzie, but at first I want to thank you for being on this virtual chat. We look forward to doing many more of these throughout the year. So many of you from all our great counties have responded with questions, so this is good, but I look forward to when we can be in person. We'll do that when it's safe to do so. So until then, notaries, please be well. Thanks a lot.
And good afternoon and welcome to each and every one of you. My name is Ozzie Stallworth. I am the Electronic Notarization and Notary Enforcement Director for the Secretary of State's office here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And so we are so very pleased, as Secretary Marshal just mentioned, to be able to host this very first of its kind Fireside Chat. So first of all, give yourselves a round of applause for being here. How about that? Yay! Excellent. Who says notaries can't have a great time and lots of fun? Well, listen, to get us started, I'm going to turn this over to Allison Perry, who is responsible for really ramping up all of the communication efforts that we've experienced over the past couple of years. And she has some housekeeping things that she is going to cover before we get started. So Allison, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Thanks, Ozzie. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here. We've got notaries from all 100 counties, so thank you so much. Make sure I'm looking at the right camera. A few points about today. We had way more notaries who wanted to join than WebEx would allow. So don't worry, we're going to be doing a few more of these events, as well as having the recording on. Look for the recording in the next couple of weeks. It will be live. Not live. It will live on our website. So we will send an email out and we'll put it on our Facebook page to let everyone know. Ozzie's going to go through as many questions as he can today. We're going to try to get through all of them. If time permits and there are other burning questions, we will allow you to type them in the chat box. So I will be monitoring, as well as my coworkers who are here with me today, who've been very helpful. So we'll let you know when there's an opportunity to type the questions in. Like I said, our office has plans to do some Facebook Lives on our notary group, and we're going to produce some other videos on a variety of different topics. Again, we'll keep you all posted. But remember, you have a lot of other great resources at your disposal. You have the notary section on our website that have the FAQs, which we will be updating throughout the year. You can email us directly, as the secretary said, at notary@sosnc.gov. The notary newsletters are on our website. If you get them monthly, if you do not get our newsletter, please email us and let us know. We want to make sure everyone gets our newsletters. Don't forget your 2016 Notary Public Manual at your disposal, a wealth of information, and the Notary Facebook group. Speaking of the group, we want to remember this is an opportunity for you all to talk to each other and learn from each other. No question is dumb, so please ask. And the reason I say that, because people have said that. I'm being transparent here. But we do ask you, we want people to be kind and not be rude. We will have to block people who continuously do that. And we have found that. So just know that we don't want this to be a place where people can be intimidated. And answer if you can. And when you do answer, try to cite the manual pages so your fellow notaries can know to go back where. And instructors, we have a lot of you on there who answer. So on behalf of Ozzy, I want to thank you in advance for answering the questions as well. So please use this group to your advantage. It's fun, but let's not abuse it, because it's something, we have over 8,000 members. So we really want to keep that going. So before we get started, we want to do something fun and take a picture of everybody. So if you would like to be part of the picture, it's going to go on our Facebook group in the newsletter. Go ahead now and turn on your video. Turn on or off your video, whichever it is. I can't remember. Is it Mar or off Mar? Turn your video on so we can see your face. So I'm going to go ahead and give everyone a few minutes. I'm going to count backwards from 5, and then we're going to take a couple of pictures, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ozzy. So I'm going to go 5, 4, take off your mask too, make sure your lipstick's on, the women, the men, fix your hats. Ooh, we got a lot of people on here, love it. Look at everybody smiling. We've got notaries from all over the counties, I love it. So let me go again, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and our boss Tim is going to take a couple pictures. Keep going. We're going to try to get different angles. Look at everybody, looks great. Even if your video is not working, that's okay. We're going to do a couple more of these. Look at, oh, wow. Ozzy, look at all these people. All your notaries are on, bright and shiny and ready to hear from you. So a few more seconds, and then we'll get Tim. All right, we're good. He's just giving me thumbs up. Now, enough about me talking. Ozzy, take it away.
All right. Again, thank you so much, Allison, for masterminding this and continuing to do all the outstanding things to improve our notary program. First of all, we have lots of information, so I'm going to get started with a couple of updates. Each of you should have, as Secretary Marshall mentioned, the 2016 Notary Public Manual. And so the first thing I want you to do is to turn to page number 27 in your manual, or at least mark down this so you can kind of make the change. On the third paragraph, starting with notaries may not rely on the matricular consular cards, on the next line, please cross out Mexican and write foreign in its place. The government statute 15A-311 does not specify a specific country. Many countries will have a matricular consular card, and the section that I just made reference to in North Carolina General Statute 15A-311, again, it doesn't specify any country. It disallows all matricular consular cards. Now, if you will turn to page number 34 in your workbook and look at the last sentence, I want you to cross out where it says driver license numbers and. Okay, so just go ahead and cross that out. Driver's license numbers are protected under the 2005 Identity Theft Act, and they cannot be recorded in anything that will be published. Now, the journal is not something that's designed to be published, and therefore you are able to record the driver's license number in your journal. It is not a requirement to do so, but you certainly can. So we're going to make these corrections in the next version of the Notary Public Manual, which will likely be published if and when there is a new law relative to remote online notarization that is currently in the legislature that we anticipate will be passed. So we'll be making updates to any things related to this in the next edition of the Notary Public Manual. Now, I'm going to try to share my screen with you so that you can find any number of the resources that we've mentioned today. Want to kind of show you where you can find the notary certificates, the emergency video notarization resource page, archives of newsletters, the statutes, the rules, in the complaint form. It's really important that you all know where these tools are. So as it is with technology, I'm sitting here hoping that as I go to share, I'll be able to do so, and I won't lose any of you or have anything that really goes sideways. So right now you should be able to see my web page here. And so from the home page, and I'll just kind of start you off here for those of you who are not familiar. To get to the notary section, you just go to divisions and press the drop down. You go to the notary section here, and scroll down. Here are all of the resources. Allison made reference to the notary newsletter archives. Those can be found here in any of the special publications that we send throughout the year. You can find those there. The notary and e-notary resources. And let's take a look here because this is pretty important. You can find out information about purchasing the Notary Public Manual, and very important are the notary certificates. So we'll have some questions that I'll answer related to notary certificates and how you provide the language. But we have these resources here. You can just kind of download, print these certificates when you need them. We have a sample downloadable journal here so that you don't necessarily have to go out and purchase a journal. You can simply make a copy of this, bind it together, and that will satisfy your journal requirements. And then there are a number of other documents related to various information that you might find useful. Now, if I go back, this is an important page here, the notary complaint form. In the event that you become aware of a notary who is violating the notary law, it is most appropriate for you to speak to that notary if you're able to do that, to help them to better understand what the law is. But short of that, you can also make sure to file a complaint form so that our office can reach out and make sure that any notary who is not doing the things that are required by statute are made aware of what the appropriate approach is. And so we do want to empower you to do that. As trusted public officials, we all have responsibility to make sure that we're protecting the public from fraud and forgery and things of that nature. So we do want to encourage you to know where those resources are. And then I also wanted to show you our emergency video notarization resource page. Now, the emergency video notarization law has just been extended through December 31st, 2021. And so we have a video here that will kind of walk you through all of the steps and procedures for performing an electronic video notarization. And we have the certificates here that are required with that particular law. We have a template of a journal that's specifically designed for emergency video notarizations. And so we have all this information here as resources for you, the notary. So again, I just want to kind of point these things out to you. When you need an application, you can find the notary applications here, the reappointment applications here, certificates of moral character. And so do make sure that you become familiar with all of the things related to the notary office that we have on our website. It's a valuable resource. Go ahead and bookmark it, and you'll be in a really good position to help yourself, specifically when we are not available, or it's after hours or something to that effect. Now, as we get started, I do want to acknowledge that we received quite a few questions regarding notarizing titles. Now, as you may recall from your notary class, we really only covered the 6 items that must be completed on title documents, lest they be considered blank or open titles. Now, those 6 items, just as a refresher, is you have to make sure that the buyer's name and address is filled in, the date of sale or delivery, the seller's signature and hand-printed name, the odometer reading, notarization must be completed, and the damage disclosure must be filled in as well. You should have been instructed to refer the person to the DMV if you had any questions that you're not sure about. Now, here's the tricky thing about titles. It's that the same question may have a different answer to it depending on what year the title was published. For example, in 2005, both the buyer and the seller needed to appear before the notary at the same time when a title was being executed. But if you go to 2018, their titles, they only require that the seller appear before the notary. So if you were to ask a question, well, does the buyer and the seller both have to appear before the notary at the time of the execution of the title? The correct answer would be, well, what year is the title? And see, because we have those, nuances in differences within, these DMV documents, it gets really tricky really fast. So what we're going to do is we're going to arrange to have a future fireside chat featuring officials from the DMV who will be able to answer all of your title questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold all of the questions that we receive related to DMV until that session. Now, in the meantime, if you are not sure about how to handle a title, the advice is to go ahead and refer those folks to the DMV. The lines might be long, but it's better to deal with those long lines than to have to undo a title that was executed erroneously or in error. That can be really problematic. So if you like that idea, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, or give us that little celebratory symbol or whatever, and Allison will know that this is something that we really do need to pursue. Excellent. So I thought that was a great idea. Now, finally, just a few notary basics. And I know some of you have been notaries for a really long time, and others are new notaries, but some notary basics that you really need to adhere to. When completing a jurat certificate, you must administer an oath or an affirmation. Okay, if you say that you've administered an oath or an affirmation, you literally have to verbally have that person swear that the statements that are in the document or that they're making are true, right? And so make sure that you do that. You administer an oath when an oath is required. In the language, obviously, that is going to be associated with the jurat certificate will say something like subscribed and sworn to before me on this day. Okay, great. Now, you also always want to affix your notary seal right next to your signature and the notarial wording. These 3 items must appear on the same page. Okay, so you can't run out of room and then affix your stamp on a secondary page. If there's not enough room for you to include your signature and your seal right there where the notarial certificate language is, what you may need to do is attach a notary certificate to the back of that signature page, and now your signature, your seal, and the notarial language is all going to be right there in the same place. Another basic, always require personal appearance and positively identify the person that you are performing the notarization for. You simply cannot perform a notarization without that individual appearing in person and without you positively identifying that individual. You have to always keep in mind the primary purpose of the Notary Act is to protect the public and prevent fraud and forgery. And the way that you're going to do that is to ensure that the person who you are going to state personally appeared before you did just that, that they were in your presence and that you verified their identity. So bedrock principles, you have to make sure that you follow those at all times. And then the notarial wording must be present on any document that you notarize. None of this stamp and sign business, okay? If there is no notarial certificate language indicating that you performed an acknowledgement or verification or proof or administered an oath or an affirmation, there's nothing for you to stamp and sign, okay? Too often we see instances where a notary will just affix their seal in their signature, but there's no notarial language. You must have some form of notarial language that will indicate what notarial act you perform. And then finally, when performing a notarization, the law requires you to use an ink pen, never a pencil. The ink pen has permanency to it, okay? So you cannot use pencils or anything else other than the statutorily required ink pen. So just wanted to kind of throw those few basics out before we launched into our first question. And again, what I want you guys to do is, as we're going through this, I want your participation from the standpoint of, if you hear something that you agree with, give it a thumbs up. If you're glad that we've explained something, let Allison know that, yep, we're right on target with that, and you appreciate it. So let's have a little bit of fun as we go through these questions that you submitted. So the first question is, are online notary services taking over the notary industry? Well, it's a really good question. And the answer is no. And the reason I answer that is no is because remote online notarization is just now beginning in North Carolina. In fact, with emergency video notarization, it was when we were first able to perform remote notarization. So we have a long way to go before remote notarizations challenge in-person notarizations in terms of the volume and the sheer numbers. However, the utility and the convenience of RON, remote online notarization, will increasingly make it an attractive alternative. Obviously, being in the situation where we were in a pandemic brought about the need for us to, venture into the remote online notary world. And many of you have probably performed some emergency video notarizations. If you have, go ahead and give us a thumbs up or something like that to let us know that some of you actually have. But in-person notarization is still the primary means of people having documents notarized. One of the things that we did post in our resources or on our website, we developed some protocols for social distancing policies while performing notarizations. And, some of the common sense things that we kind of highlighted is, instead of passing the ID back and forth, have the person, lay the ID on the table and you can kind of view it that way. You can kind of positively identify someone by operating over, the length of a 6-foot table or something to that effect. Use, individual pins, have them bring their own pins or provide them pins that they can kind of take with them, or disinfect them if you are going to reuse the pins and things of that nature. So I did want to kind of point out that, in this environment that we're still living in, it's really important, even when you're performing in-person notarizations, to make sure that you're taking precautions to keep yourself and others safe. But online notarization or remote notarization, it is something that we are now at this point fully in support of. There is a bill that is in the legislature right now that we are working with legislators and other stakeholders to make sure that it's going to be the most appropriate thing for North Carolina in terms of the details of it. But yes, remote online notarization has come to North Carolina, and it is here to stay. We're going to make sure that it is the most safe and secure process that we can possibly have. but there will always be a need for in-person notarization. And we won't be in this pandemic situation forever, and so things will get back to some normalcy in many regards, and notarial acts are going to be a part of that. So thanks so much for that question. The next one is, if a notary stamp has a commission date printed on it that has expired, is it permissible to line through the expired date and write in a new commission expiration date? And the answer to that is no. Alterations to any information contained in the notary seal is prohibited. And you can find that on page number 117. And that's actually a statute that's found in 10B 37 C1. And so you are prohibited from making any changes or alterations to the information in the notary seal. Now, if you have a notary seal that includes the expiration date in it, but it says my commission expires, and then there's a little line there where you can write in that expiration date, the statute does expressly allow for that type of seal to be used, but you cannot change or alter any information that is contained in a notary seal. And in fact, if you were to make a seal impression and it came out kind of light on the top right-hand corner and some information kind of wasn't clear, what you would need to do is to make another seal impression rather than grab a Sharpie and try to touch up the part that was kind of light or lacking. And that's due to the provision that we just made reference to in 10B 37. Okay, so the next question we have that was submitted is, can you please cover the exact information, signatures, that needs to be recorded in the notary journal? What is required for North Carolina and what is prohibited? I heard North Carolina does not permit the use of thumbprints. All right, so here are the things that need to be recorded: the date and the time of the notarial act, the printed names and signatures of the principals, method of identification that's used, the type of document that was notarized, and the type of notarization: an acknowledgement, oath or affirmation, verification or proof. Now, this is sufficient for traditional notarization, and you can reference this information in your handbook on page number 34. Now, for the emergency video notarization law, you will also need to record the county where you both were, the notary as well as the person you're performing the notarization for, the names of anyone else who happened to be in the room with the individual who you're performing the notarization for, the type of teleconferencing technology that was used: Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams, or whatever type of technology that you were using. You'd also need to record in the journal for an EVN whether you could clearly see and hear each other during the notarial act. So all those are additional requirements for an emergency video notarization recording, including, again, very importantly, the counties that the individuals were in. Now, for those who challenge the concept of keeping a journal, and we've had lots of discussion on the message board about the journal and whether or not it's required, understand that it is a Class I felony for anyone without authority to use, conceal, destroy, or deface the seal or notarial records, which is the journal of the notary. And if you turn to your Notary Public Manual on page 131 in 10B 60F, it's explained there. And this is designed to help the notary fulfill their statutory responsibilities to protect the public against fraud and forgery. And that's written in the statute in 10B 2 and 1. And you can find that on page number 93. So in order to fulfill your statutory responsibility, you need to keep a journal, okay? The journal is so vital to the role of a notary that it is protected under a Class I felony for anybody to, destroy or misuse that journal in any way without authority. Okay, so please understand what your specific role is as a notary, and without notaries, members of our society are at great risk of being defrauded in any number of ways. And so we go back to those two bedrock principles of personal appearance and positively identifying the document signer. Okay. These things are critical to making sure that the folks who end up with a document with the notary signature and seal on it, which, by the way, is going to be trusted by any and everybody who receives that document. It's going to be accepted at our public records. It's going to be accepted in the highest courts of the land as prima facie evidence. Why? Well, because the trusted public official has affixed his or her signature and seal on those documents. So the act and the functionality of notaries are critical to protecting the public's interest here in the great state of North Carolina. All right, so next question was, do I need to take the test if I have the latest Notary Public Manual? Well, the answer to that typically is going to be yes. All new and renewing notaries are required to take the notary exam unless you are an attorney. Okay? Renewing notaries may be exempt if they've been continuously commissioned since July 10th of 1991 and have not been disciplined by the Secretary of State. So you will certainly need to take the examination, even though you purchased the required Notary Public Manual. Thank you so much for doing that, and good luck on the exam. All right, so we move to our next question, which is, when administering the oath, who literally says the oath? Is it the notary or the principal? Well, the fact of the matter is that either can say the oath. The notary can say the oath while inserting the principal's name in the statement, or the notary can ask the principal to read the oath. When administering a common oath or affirmation, it's fine to simply say, do you swear that the statements in this document are true, so help you God? Instead of trying to read the entire statement, that might be a 2 or 3 page statement, by the way, that the person is swearing to is true. Okay, so in many instances, and all of you have been to the Register of Deeds office to be sworn in as a notary, and so you'll recall that probably in many instances, they will simply give you the oath sheet and have you read it so that you are stating that I, Ozzie Stallworth, do swear to uphold the, and then just read the statement that is there, and that will be sufficient to take the oath. Or in some instances, they might actually read the oath by saying, do you, Ozzie Stallworth, swear that you will uphold all of the duties that are required, and then the person just responds with yes or I do, or something to that effect. So either way will work. You just have to kind of be comfortable with whether or not you're going to, ask them to state or read the oath, or whether or not you are going to do so. And the same is true for an affirmation. And by the way, let me just drop this in here as well. Sometimes notaries are a little bit confused as to when to administer an oath or an affirmation. Well, they're legally equivalent, so it really doesn't matter which one is done. So if there is a question, the easiest thing to do is to ask the principal signer or the person who you will be administering this oath or affirmation to, whether they prefer an oath or an affirmation. Some people will prefer to not do an oath for religious reasons, and those religious reasons can be multiple. It can be because they don't believe in God, or that they do believe in God, and they believe that the Bible says don't swear, let your yea mean yea and your nay mean nay. And so an individual like that, they have those beliefs, they likely request an affirmation. Otherwise, if they did not have those particular beliefs, an oath would be just as good for them. And so you don't ever have to worry about making that determination yourself. Simply ask. And if they do have a concern or an issue, trust me, they'll let you know. And then you'll know which one to go with, the oath or the affirmation. And so another question that was submitted to us was, for an acknowledgement, are we not supposed to witness the principal sign their document? Or is it that only applicable to the oath and the affirmation? And this is a really good question. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask you all a question. How many of you have heard in the past that when you're performing an acknowledgement, that document has to be signed in your presence? Go ahead and raise your hand if you've heard that before. Okay. Yeah, quite a few folks have heard that before, and quite a few folks actually believe that. But that's literally not what the statute requires for an acknowledgement. An examination of the statutory requirement on page 40 of your manual confirms that the document does not need to be signed in front of the notary when performing an acknowledgement. They must simply be sure that the principal acknowledges that it is his or her signature and that they signed it willingly. It's okay for them to sign the document before a notary, but it is not required. In other words, if that document has been signed previously and they bring it into you on a particular date, if it is an acknowledgement that is needed and it's already been signed, it is fine for you to perform that notarization. You simply want to ask them if they acknowledge that this is their signature and that they signed it willingly. And if they say yes, or they did, then that's going to be sufficient to take their acknowledgement. Obviously, if they sign it in your presence, that is a tacit acknowledgement unto itself, because you've actually watched them sign it. So you wouldn't even have to ask them whether or not they signed it willingly, because you observed that. Okay. So that is always going to be true with an acknowledgement. All right. Now, the oath or the affirmation, on the other hand, does need to be signed in the presence of the notary each and every time. If you turn to page number 45 in your manual, you'll see the language there that is always going to be associated with an oath or an affirmation, and you'll know that that is a jurat certificate. The jurat is defined as a certificate evidencing the administration of an oath or an affirmation, and the language that is typically associated with it is signed and sworn to before me. So you're literally saying, as a notary, that the document was signed in your presence. And in order for that statement to be true, and it must be true, then you have to make sure that that person has signed the document. So if an individual has brought in a document and an oath or an affirmation is required and it has already been signed, well, you would need to have that individual sign that document again in order for you to be able to perform that particular notarization. Well, yeah, the document would carry two signatures on there. And, in most instances, it shouldn't be a problem. In the instances that it would present a problem, then that's not the notary's problem, because your statement must be true. You cannot complete a false notary certificate. That would be equivalent to notary misconduct. For you to create and fill out a certificate that says that the document was signed in your presence, but it was not, that just doesn't work. Your statement must be true. Okay, so that person would need to sign that document in your presence. So again, that's one of the key differences between an acknowledgement and an oath or an affirmation. An acknowledgement can be signed in your presence, but it does not have to be. If it was signed, the person just simply needs to acknowledge that it was indeed their signature. All right, so we got through that question, and we deal with that quite a bit. So here's the next question that was submitted to us. Are there any plans to allow mobile notaries to charge for traveling to clients as other states do? Well, unfortunately, I'm not aware of any legislation on the horizon that would change the current law to allow notaries to charge for a travel fee. Now, this does lead to another question that we had received regarding whether our office is actually clear on what the statute actually says about notaries' ability to charge a travel fee, and whether or not setting up an LLC is a viable way to allow additional fees to be charged by notaries, as apparently some have been advised. Now, I will admit to you that this is the first time that I had been made aware or heard the notion that a notary could set up an LLC to kind of circumvent the laws that regulate travel fees or charging travel fees. So I'm interested to know, has anyone else ever heard that before? Is that something that is commonly out there? Okay, I'm not seeing very much of a response where you guys have heard that. Just one or two of our very, very experienced notary instructors. Hey, Karen, shout out to you and all of our instructors. Thanks so much for being here. But anyway, let me go ahead and address that. And I'm glad that that does not seem to be something, at least within this group, that is prevalent. But North Carolina Administrative Code 07B .0904B10. That's a mouthful. It's on page number 152 in your Notary Public Manual. It's very clear that notaries may not charge a fee in excess of that which is set by law, including fees for mileage or travel. The statutory fee for the maximum amount that you can charge is $5 per signature notarized or per oath administered. And you can find that on page 115. It's in 10B31. Our laws and regulations are explicitly clear on this point. I'm not an attorney and our office does not give legal advice, but I'm not aware that setting up an LLC, an LLP, an S corporation or partnership or any other legal entity will exempt a notary from following any of the notary laws, including how much you're authorized to charge for a notarization. So from our perspective, the law is crystal clear, and we would advise against trying to circumvent that law. The better approach would be to speak to your legislators to try to change the law. I will say personally that I certainly do not think it is an inappropriate thing to have notaries to have the ability to charge travel fees or for mileage or something to that effect. But under our current rules and regulations, we're just not able to. And so it would need to be changed from the standpoint of the notary law. Okay. And who knows, maybe one day that will happen. But it is something that would need to be taken up by the legislature, and each of you have representatives that would be able to help affect that change. So that's where something like that would need to be addressed, and not in any other way to kind of again circumvent that particular requirement or limitation, if you want to look at it that way. Okay, let's move on and look at another question. A closing attorney told their clients that a notary should be able to acknowledge documents one day and then notarize another day. Is this accurate information for us to know? Other than video notarizations, does everything have to be done on the same day? Now, it's a really good question, and let me make sure to cover this so that you're extremely clear on what a specific provision in the law actually does. Let me state right up front that the entirety of the notarization has to be done on the same day. Okay? So what I'm about to share with you does not say anything other than that. And I'll kind of explain some technicalities along the way. but 10B20C1 on page 108 of your manual states that a notary public shall not perform a notarial act if the principal or the subscribing witness is not in the notary's presence at the time the notarial act is performed. Very important. They have to be there at the time that the notarial act is performed. But then it goes on to say, however, nothing in this chapter requires a notary public to complete the notarial certificate in the presence of the principal. So let's break that down so you understand exactly what that means. First of all, the provision still requires that the principal personally appear before you, present an ID, take the oath of office or the affirmation, or acknowledge their signature, sign a journal if they're going to pay a fee to do that. In other words, all of the things that are required to be done during a course of a notarial act must be done. Okay? And I want you to understand this. Technically speaking, and again, technicality here, and this particular statute speaks to this technicality. Technically speaking, completing the notary certificate is the act of the notary explaining what they did during the course of the notarization. You get that? So what that means is that the notary certificate, completing it, isn't technically a part of the notarization. The notarization is already performed. And now what you're doing is you're telling your story about what you did when you perform that notarization. Okay? And so, because technically speaking, that's how this kind of breaks down, that's why they're able to include this provision here that says nothing in the statute requires notary to complete the notary certificate in the presence of the principal. Now, let me share with you the application to this. Classic example is, suppose you're at the DMV and the long line there, and person has this title that they're going to need to have executed, and they're going to leave it there with the DMV's office, right? So the DMV agent is able to perform the notarial act, right? Personal appearance, positive identification, take that person's acknowledgement, make sure that person signed the document. And now what's left? Well, the notary has to complete the notarial certificate and fix their seal and signature on there. So what this law allows to happen in a case like this, where that document's going to be left with the notary, and again, that's the key to this. If the document's not going to be left to the notary, then this doesn't apply anyway. Why? Well, because most often when a person brings a document in to have it notarized, once you put your signature and seal on that document, what are they going to do? They're going to take it with them. So they're not leaving that document with you. But in this particular scenario, this law allows that notary to put that document aside and then deal with those folks in that long line. And then once that line has dissipated, then they can kind of go back to that certificate, that document that they're notarizing, and complete the notary certificate. Okay? So that's the purpose of this. And I believe this is what the question was getting to. Now, what about the idea of completing this on a subsequent day, the next day or the week after? No, that's not what the intent of this is. It's to just kind of buy a little bit of time for the notary to be able to maybe deal with some things that are, pressing at the moment. But it is not designed, or its purpose isn't to be able to sit this aside and come back in 2 weeks and complete the notarial certificate. There's so much that will have potentially gone on by then. Now you're dealing with, a high probability that some information in that certificate is not going to be correct. So all notarial acts should be completed at the same time on the same day. This provision just provides a little bit of wiggle room so that, in the event the document's going to be left with the notary, and the notary will have an opportunity to kind of complete that certificate language, after the fact, after that person has left their presence, then it allows them to be able to do that. Okay. So I hope that clears that question up. All right. And so next, let's, wow, it is 1 o'clock. So time is a ticking. What do they say? Time flies when you're having fun. So let me go ahead and take a quick poll. This is the very first time that we have done this, as you all know. So let's take a moment to get a little feedback from you guys. Let us know how things are going. Is this something that is valuable to you? Are you getting good information? Feel free to write something in the chat to say too slow, boring, I'm not interested in this stuff, or really good stuff, really happy to hear it, good questions, or what have you. So I see you guys really got the hang of all the little thumbs up and emojis and all that kind of thing. That is awesome. Well, terrific. All righty, great. So let's go ahead. We're going to turn back over to the questions here, and we're going to keep on rolling since you guys are having so much fun with this. So the next question is, I work at a prison and I'm requested at times to notarize for inmates. Since there isn't anything listed in your handbook regarding this subject, is there any advice you can offer to assist with notarizing for inmates? I've been asked to notarize books or manuscripts, poems, and the like, where the inmate wants it notarized because they think it prevents someone else from duplicating their work. I attempt to explain that I'm only notarizing their signature. Any information you have regarding notarizing for inmates would be greatly appreciated. I do keep a journal. Thank you so much for that. So let me mention something before I answer this question, because I think it's really important for us to tell you that we want to hear from you and get your feedback. The fact that she mentioned here, or he mentioned here, that this is information that is not addressed in the North Carolina Notary Public Manual. We pay attention to those things. Now, it's really important that you understand that, we try to stay focused on the notary law and things that are really pertinent and related to notaries. Otherwise, we just go all over the place and have a 800-page book. But if you believe that there's something of value that should be added to the next version of the Notary Public Manual, feel free to share that with us. It might not make the cut, but it's going to give us an opportunity to think about something. And I will share with you, we get so many questions regarding the inmates in notarizing for people who are in prison, that it is something that we are likely going to include in the next version of the Notary Public Manual, because we get so many questions about it. Now, in terms of answering the question, there is no separate set of rules for inmates. Whatever you do to perform any other notarization, including the documents required for identification purposes or anything else, hold true. There are no exceptions. There are no dilution of the rules based on the challenging circumstances that inmates find themselves in. The most challenging part of performing a notarization for someone who is incarcerated is going to be to positively identify them, as they generally do not have identification documents that meet the statutory requirements of satisfactory evidence of identity. Okay, and those requirements call for a current government issued ID issued by either federal, state, or tribal government agency that has a photograph of the person's face, a physical description, and a signature. And most often, again, folks who are incarcerated, they don't have that form of ID. They don't have ID cards issued by like the DMV or driver licenses and things of that nature. Some of them will have numbers and wristbands and other forms of documents that fall short of what the statute requires. So you're really reduced to utilizing either personal knowledge to positively identify that individual. And again, that's not just a casual acquaintance. That is where you actually really know someone on a personal basis. Or you would use a credible witness, which, is going to be very challenging in those circumstances as well, because, you would need to know someone personally who also knew that inmate, who you would trust enough to use as a credible witness. So very challenging circumstance for individuals that are incarcerated to get documents notarized. Now, the other part of that question was related to the different items that, that they are typically trying to have notarized. You have to be mindful of what your statutory requirements are for notarizing and what your capabilities and authority is. You can perform acknowledgments, oaths, or affirmations, or verifications and proofs. You can't certify copies of documents. You can't, verify anything about who was the author of a particular document or anything like that. So, again, nothing changes as it relates to somebody being, in that unfortunate situation where they're imprisoned versus you notarizing for, the person, who's in your neighborhood across the street from you. Okay. So I hope that kind of shed some light on dealing with those types of situations, but we do have lots of questions related to that through the year. Now, another question. I've passed my electronic notary class and have established the seal with an approved electronic notary provider. However, when I went to do an electronic notarization via video, I couldn't get it to work. Can you walk us through how to do an electronic video notarization, which seems to be different from a regular video notarization? Okay, so first I would direct you to our EVN resource page that we saw a little bit earlier, where you can view the video with a full explanation of the EVN law. We do deal with how you would perform that emergency video notarization there as well. But in the way of a quick explanation, you would essentially use your electronic notary solution in connection with a video conference tool such as WebEx, Zoom, or something to that effect. Now, for those of you who are not electronic notaries, to become an electronic notary, you have to go through an additional course of instruction, just like you have to go through a course of instruction to become a notary. The course of instruction is about half the time, 3 to 4 hours. And then you're able to obtain an electronic notary signature and seal from an approved electronic notary solution provider. And so that is the tool that you would need to use just for a traditional electronic notarization. And so this question is marrying the emergency video notarization law, which allows for notaries to perform remote notarial acts. And again, the remote notary act can be performed by a traditional notary as well as by an emergency or by an electronic notary. So you don't have to be an electronic notary to perform an emergency video notarization online. And again, we don't have a time in this particular format to provide that education, but the video on that resource page will walk you through all of that. So in answer to the question, the key would be to learn to share your application so that you can turn control over to the signer to operate your computer so that when it's time for the principal to sign on your electronic notary solution, the principal will be able to affix their own signature. Like for an example, right now we're on a WebEx tool, and in WebEx, I have the ability to make any one of you a presenter. And beyond that, I can give you the ability to operate my computer. So if I had a program or even a slide presentation or any program that I was actually running, I could give you the authority, like right now, so that you could control my mouse and start clicking stuff on my computer, which would also allow you the ability to sign the electronic document that is going to be notarized. Okay, so when you're trying to perform an electronic notarization using the emergency video notarization law, there's two things at play. Your electronic notary solution, where your electronic notary signature and seal is going to be accessible, and a video conference tool like what we're operating on today. All right. And so marry those two things together. I'm running my electronic notary solution. I've got you on WebEx or some other tool, Zoom like, and then I grant you the ability to sign documents on my computer. And that can be done remotely. And then I'll be able to affix my electronic notary signature and seal on there. And so I hope that gives you a picture of how that would potentially work. And, if there's more interest on there, maybe one day we'll have a session where we'll actually walk through that and do it in a live session. But hopefully that gives you a good picture of how you would perform an electronic notarization using the emergency video notarization tools. Okay. Now, a lot of that might have been a little bit abstract, and some of you may not be electronic notaries, but I wanted to say or ask whether or not that explanation was, particularly since we're sitting on a video conference tool, whether or not that was an explanation that made sense to you all. Did most of that kind of come across okay? Okay, great. After all, after a year, we're all experts on this video conference tool now, right? Yeah, but you're still on mute when you're not supposed to be, huh? I don't know. Seems like we figure that out sooner or later, but it is what it is. All right, so let's move on. We have several other questions, and our time is a ticking. What if the document I'm asked to notarize doesn't have a notarization section? Do I just write it all out by hand? Well, the first thing that I need to mention here is that you would need to ask the signer what type of notarization is needed, because notaries cannot make that determination, as it's going to be considered the unauthorized practice of law. And you can find that on 10 pages in your Notary Public Manual. Okay. So most often the document that's presented is going to have notarial language pre-printed on it. But in those instances where there is no notarial language, remember, you cannot simply stamp and sign a document without there being notarial certificate language indicating what type of notarial act you perform. So again, the first thing that you're going to do is ask that person, what kind of notarization do you need? Now, they may or may not know. If they do not know, they can find out by asking an attorney, or asking the person who they're sending the document to, asking the person who told them they needed to have it notarized, or you can simply, and the law authorizes this, provide them with a selection of certificates. So you can open up your Notary Public Manual and show them the various certificates. Again, you can go to our website, download all of those certificates that are there, and give them a selection of certificates and say, hey, these are the statutory certificates that I have access to. Which one do you want me to use? And then have them select the certificate language. And then at that point in time, you're able to provide that language for them. Okay. And you can write it longhand on the document. Nothing wrong with that. Might not have the most professional look, but it's okay to do that. Or if you have a means to type it on there some kind of way, you can do that. Or you can use a notary certificate and simply staple it to the back of the signature page of the document. And now, as I'm talking about these notary certificates, let me take just a moment, and I'm going to attempt to share my screen again. And this is always risky, but we're going to give it a shot because I wanted to show you what a notary certificate would look like. And so right now you should see, and let me see if I can't blow this up a little bit more, make it larger. All right, this is a notary certificate from the Secretary of State's website. It's for the acknowledgement, okay? And so you'll see the notarial language there. State of, county of. The county of is always going to be the county that you are in when you're performing the notarization, okay? Not the county that you're commissioned in. You have statewide jurisdiction, so you can notarize in any county in the state of North Carolina. So the county that's in this venue area is always going to reflect the county that you are in when you're actually performing the notarization. And of course, North Carolina is going to always be the state because you can't notarize outside of the state of North Carolina. And then you have the notarial language for the acknowledgement wording. I certify the following person or persons personally appear before me this day, each acknowledging to me that he or she signed the foregoing document. If it's one person and it's a he, make sure you select the correct pronoun and line through whatever is not appropriate. Okay. And then you'll see we have the notary certificate down here where the notary signature. Okay, I'm gonna try to get fancy and do some highlighting. Woo, look at there. So you have the notary signature, your printed name, your commission expiration date, and of course your seal, right? So those are the things that you have to make sure that you include whenever you're performing a notarization. This is the certification that you're going to make. And this is what I want to really point out on these certificates. Now, this language here, this is language related to the emergency video notarization language. And I'll come back to that in just a second, because what I want to point out was this optional language that appears on all of our notary certificates. Now, whenever you have to use a notary certificate, and again, what you're going to do is you're going to staple this page to the back of the signature page, okay? In the event that there's no notarial language on there or there's not enough room for you to put your signature and seal on there. So in this optional section, this is designed to be descriptive of the document that it's going to be attached to. In other words, notaries will often ask and have a concern, if I attach a certificate to the document, how do I know that it's not going to be removed from that document and attached to another document that I didn't notarize? Well, there's not very much that you can do to prevent that. So what it is that we have done is included this optional section so that you can write in the title or the type of the document, who it was signed by, the date that's on that document, and a number of pages. In that way, this is going to describe the document that it is attached to. And if this certificate happens to be removed from one document and attached to another document, then it's going to be a clue to whoever's receiving that document that, hey, something is a little bit off here. I just saw in the chat, where can I get this? These certificates are on our webpage. I showed at the very beginning. At the very end, I think I'll try to go back to that particular page. It's at sosnc.gov. But all these certificates are designed with this optional section in place. Okay. And so just wanted to go ahead and show you that really quickly. And I see folks posting in the chat and putting up web pages and stuff. You guys are so awesome. This is just such a terrific group. But let's see how many more questions we can get in here. Is it possible to put the Notary Public Handbook online for those times when we have a question but are not carrying the hard copy? It could be in a notary only accessible part of the website. Proving we own the hard copy should be easy enough, not to mention that it's a requirement for commissioning. Well, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to put the Notary Public Manual online as it's currently constructed. However, I do want to point out that you have access to all the notary laws and the administrative code through the website, and to kind of walk you through where you could find that earlier, so you can bookmark that and you will have that accessible to you at all times, as long as you have your smartphone with you, and everybody does. We don't leave home without it, right? So know that we are planning to add more content, more educational content, such as videos and other training tools on our website for all notaries to be able to access. And anything that's on our website is going to be available at no cost to notaries at all. So that should be helpful as well to you all. Now, my commission will expire on January of 2022. My question is, what do I need to do in order to get recommissioned? Well, within 10 weeks of your commission expiration date, you will need to complete the online renewal examination, unless you're also an attorney or you've been continuously commissioned since July 10th of 1991. Otherwise, this applies to everybody else. You have to submit a signed and notarized reappointment application along with a $50 fee to the Secretary of State's office. This application, as we showed you, is available on our website. You'll then need to take your oath of office at the Register of Deeds office in the county of your residence and obtain a new seal. That is, if you have included an expiration date in your seal. So if you have an expiration date in your seal, obviously when you get a new commission, that term is going to change. You have a new expiration date. That seal is no longer going to be viable. So you will need to turn it into the Secretary of State's office. That's another point I want to mention. You do not destroy your old notary seals. You must turn those into the Secretary of State's office. It is our responsibility to destroy those seals to make sure that they are taken out of circulation. Okay? But that is the process that you'll have to go through when you are looking to renew your notary commission. You have to submit another application. You have to take an online examination, with those few exceptions, or those two exceptions: a notary who is an attorney or someone who's been continuously commissioned since July 10th of 1991. They are exempt from taking examination, although it'd be a really good idea for them to take the examination as well. Then remember that you will always need to go back and take another oath of office at the Register of Deeds. They're not lifelong oaths. You have to take an oath each and every time you are commissioned as a notary, recommissioned, or you receive an electronic notary registration. The same process takes place. All right. Is it legal to do loan signings in North Carolina, or do you have to be an attorney? Now, this is a big question. We get lots of questions related to this all the time. So we have addressed this specific topic on page number 62 of the Notary Public Manual, where it reads in part, the state bar has opined in its authorized practice advisory opinion 2002-1, which was revised on January 26th of 2012, on the role of laypersons in the consummation of residential real estate transactions, that a non-lawyer may, 1, present and identify documents necessary to complete a North Carolina residential real estate closing, direct the parties where to sign the documents, and ensure that the parties have properly executed the documents, and receive and disperse the closing funds. The opinion also made clear that these ministerial functions that we just talked about can be done by non-attorneys, but that they may not perform any activities that would constitute the practice of law, which would include giving advice, preparing documents, or solving disputes, among other things. So in other words, okay, and let me preface this by saying there are a number of notaries who are working as signing agents. The Secretary of State's office does not regulate signing agent industries, right? We're not in the mortgage business at all. We regulate notaries. They hire notaries, as I understand it, because these documents that are associated with the closing process need to be notarized. So you're hired as a signing agent by virtue of the fact that you are a notary, okay? Notaries, and this is where the Secretary of State's office is pretty firm, and we come down on this topic of discussion here. Notaries in no way must engage in the unauthorized practice of law. Okay, you can't give advice, you can't make recommendations, you can't prepare documents for people, you can't help folks understand documents. That's clearly outlined in the notary statute. Notaries are not authorized to charge a higher fee than the statutory limit of $5 per signature when performing these or any other notarizations. So you can't charge more than the statutory fee for notarizations. Notaries are not authorized to charge a travel fee or charge mileage fees. So don't charge travel fees, don't charge mileage fees. If you do that as a notary, you will be in violation of the notary law. You must always follow North Carolina general statutes to avoid the unauthorized practice of law. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Okay, there's some things that the bar opinion, not the Secretary of State's office, has said are allowable for non-attorney notaries to do. So you take that and you understand that. And again, that's on page 62. But you have to make sure that you are not doing anything that would constitute the unauthorized practice of law. And you need to make sure that you're not doing anything that would be in violation of the notary law. Okay. And, I believe that those things are being done in ways that will prevent individuals from, running afoul of the notary law and the unauthorized practice of law. But you need to make sure that you are very clear about what it is that you are doing when you are operating in that capacity. Okay, because it's an area that has lots of risks, and we believe that there are certainly very important reasons for the way that our mortgage industry in North Carolina is set up to include attorneys in that process, and that they are a very viable part of keeping North Carolinians safe. And it is clear from the notary law and in what you are instructed in class that you are not attorneys by virtue of you taking a 6-hour course. It would be nice, but that's just not the case, right? And so you do not act as an attorney in any way, shape, or form in anything that you do, whether it's related to acting, in the capacity as what they refer to as a signing agent, or in performing any other type of notarial act. Okay, so I hope that was clear, and if you have any other questions about that, feel free to, let us know. So our time is just about up. So I'm going to see how many more of these questions I can squeeze in here. I'm in North Carolina and the state doesn't offer RON. Can I still get certified to do RON in other states that are offered? No, you cannot. You are a notary in North Carolina and you're not authorized to operate as a North Carolina notary in any other state. So, outside of our emergency video notarization law, you'll just have to kind of, do that for the time being and wait for our permanent law to pass. And by the way, currently, if you're doing emergency video notarization, both you as well as the person you're notarizing for must be in the state of North Carolina. So you would not be able to notarize remotely for anybody who is outside of the state of North Carolina. I have a question as I am out of practice. I charge everyone $5 per signature per page, correct? Or I charge everyone $5 per signature per page. Is that correct? How does that work in an office setting? Okay, you may charge $5 per signature, but be sure not to be confused by the number of pages or the number of times that you affix your stamp, because those can change without impacting the number of signatures you're notarizing. For example, a husband and a wife, they come into your office and they have a singular document, and he is signing that document as a principal, as an attorney in fact, and as a trustee. So that's 3 signatures there. And she is signing that document as an individual and as a trustee. So that's 5 total signatures and it's only 1 document, okay? So, you can charge, what's that, 5, 10, 15, 20, $25 that you can charge because you're notarizing 5 signatures, but yet there's only 1 document, okay? Now, same husband and wife, they come into your office and they have 3 documents, okay? He's signing 1 document. Both of them are signing the first document as individuals. It's 2 signatures. Both of them are signing the second document as trustees. That's 4 signatures. And he's signing this third document as an attorney in fact. So that's 5 signatures, but it's 3 documents. But the amount that you can charge doesn't change, right? It's still $25. So you don't get confused with the number of documents or the number of certificates that you're completing. Focus in on the number of signatures you are notarizing. And that's how you calculate the correct fee, the number of signatures. Everything else can change, like I just showed you in that example. Okay. And, we are right up against our quitting time. So listen, we started out strong and we are still going strong. So I would like to take this opportunity to just really thank you all for desiring additional information so that you are able to perform your duties as notaries at the highest level possible. Our society would not exist without notaries. If notaries decide to take a break and not notarize for a week, our commerce would literally shut down. Think about that. Houses wouldn't be able to be bought and sold, property, boats, cars, contracts, all sorts of things. And so you serve a very vital role in our economic infrastructure, but also in protecting the public from fraud and forgery. And I know by virtue of you being here that you take that role very seriously. And on behalf of Elaine Marshal, the Honorable Secretary of State, who is the most awesome secretary in all of the United States of America, we thank you so much for your service and really appreciate you being here. I know Allison is going to cherish any and all feedback that you're able to share with us regarding this fireside chat. As was mentioned, we do intend to continue to provide not only additional Fireside Chats, but man, Allison's got all kinds of crazy stuff in works for me with Facebook Live things and, circuses, and I don't know what else she's got planned. But hey, I'm game if you guys continue to show up in the fashion that you did today. And again, we're here for you. We ask you to continue to, participate in all the forms that we have available. As Allison mentioned, and I'll underscore this, as you are engaged in sharing information with one another on the Facebook deal, it's always helpful, as I tried to do today, to point folks to a particular page in the book, right? Or a statute and that kind of thing. And we can kind of cut down on some of the things that might not be true, because we've heard so many things for so long, begins to sound like something that's accurate and true. Like what we talked about earlier about when you're performing an acknowledgement, does it have to be signed in your presence? Well, no, it doesn't. And the statute tells us that. So, the more we can actually put statutes or references to the guidebook or manual out there, that's going to be a big help for all of us. So again, I am done. Thank you so very much for being here with us for this enjoyable first Fireside Chat. Wish you all a wonderful weekend. Please do your part to keep yourself safe and to keep your neighbors safe as well. All right. Continue to serve the citizens of North Carolina with great distinction, as our notaries do. We have the most awesome and best notary program in the entire country, and that couldn't be said without you. And again, a special shout out and thumbs up to our outstanding Notary Public certified instructors. Give them a big round of applause. Thank you so much for all that you do. And with that, we'll go ahead and sign off for now. Until next time, have a great weekend.